Know me on Instagram as the Sculpted Vegan, or may not know me, but today I'm not going to talk about bodybuilding, which is what I'm normally talking about. I'm going to talk about something else which is really close to my heart and has been for a long time, because I've been very, very vocal on Instagram and on Facebook about the fact that what is happening in the world at the minute is wrong. And honestly, when I was asked to speak here today, my initial reaction was no fucking way. No way. I truly was thinking, I'm not going to stand up on that stage. I'm not going to have my family potentially embarrassed, because there's a lot of people have been wanting to stop me from speaking out about what's happening at the minute, because quite simply they're scared. And I was going to stand up here today, and whenever I thought about standing up here today, honestly, I was scared too, because I run quite a big business. I have nearly 500,000 followers on Instagram. I have a family who think like me, thank God. Who else here has a family who is like-minded and thinks like them? Yes, my family are all over here behind me. Well, they were, they might have moved now. There, they're jumping in the middle. So thank God I have the support of my family, but I have been very, very vocal on Instagram. There have been a lot of people who have wanted to stop me. But today I thought it was important that despite my fear, I stand up and I talk about what is going on today, because this is not a pandemic about a virus. This is a pandemic of fear. Yes? This is a pandemic of fear. And it got me asking the question, because whenever I was thinking about what I was going to speak about when I stood up here today, I was like, what the hell am I going to say? I'm a vegan bodybuilder, right? A vegan bodybuilder. And what the hell, what do I know? I don't really know anything about, about science or about really anything that's going on, but I do know one thing. And the one thing that I know is vaccine passports are wrong. They're wrong. This is not about a vaccine. I am actually pro-vaccination. I think vaccination is one of man's most noble concepts. But what I am, more than anything, is pro-choice. It should be my choice to inject myself with a vaccine. I should not have to live in fear of losing my human rights, my basic right to move in the world, to walk into a shop, to purchase groceries, to have a drink in a bar, because I have chosen not to inject myself with an experimental vaccine that may harm me. Yes? And so the question is, why are we afraid to speak up? Why? Because there are many, many people who are afraid to speak up. There's this small group of us who are all here who are very, very, very anti-vaccine passport. And we're here flying the flag, showing our support. And then there's the group on the other side who are actually pro-vaccine passport, and that is their right. And I would never take that away from them. But then there's this massive body of people in the middle, some of whom have been vaccinated and some of whom haven't, who don't believe in vaccine passports, but who are standing by and saying nothing. And the question is, why? Why? Well, I have a hypothesis, if you want to hear it. And it all goes back to a story that I remembered from when I was a child. So when I was young and I was in school, it was a boarding school actually, there was a teacher who shall remain nameless in case he's still alive, although it has been 30 years, so he may not be. But there was a teacher who was considered a bit of a tyrant. Now, he was mostly angry. He used to terrorize the children. He controlled a lot through shouting and through fear, and everybody was scared of him. Now, there was one particular child in the school called Christopher who had learning difficulties and who wasn't like the other children. He had much more of a difficult time. And he got bullied and picked on a lot by the other children, and he did suffer quite a lot in school, and it was painful to watch. But you could understand the other children doing it, but it was hard when the teachers did it too. And so this particular day, I remember it was coming up to actually leaving time for the day pupils, and the boarders were going to go for dinner. And you did your homework in school, in this particular school, before you left. And I remember walking past a classroom and hearing this teacher, who shall remain nameless, screaming at the top of his lungs. Screaming at the top of his lungs. And I peeked my head around the classroom door to see what was going on, and Christopher, the boy with learning difficulties, was sitting at his desk with his hand in his head, crying his heart out and wiping snot from his nose, while this teacher was standing over him, screaming at him because he wasn't doing his homework correctly. And he was the only child left in the class because everyone else was going home. And I kind of stood there paralyzed for a second, not really knowing what to do and feeling desperately sorry for Christopher, when I saw the teacher lift his hand and strike him. He hit him hard across the head. And Christopher cowered in the corner, and he started to wail, and he cowered, and the teacher grabbed him and yanked him back up on the desk, sat him down on the chair, and screamed at him again to do his homework. And I was absolutely horrified. I think I was about 9 years of age. And so I knew Christopher's mum was outside in the car park waiting to pick him up. And I knew she must be wondering where he was, because it was about 10 minutes past leaving time. And so I ran outside, and I thought, I'm going to tell his mum what I've seen, because this is not okay. And I ran outside to his mum's car, and I went up to her window, and I knocked on the window, and she rolled down the window and she smiled at me. And in that moment, a lot of things went through my head that weren't to do with telling Christopher's mum what had happened. I suddenly thought, what if I get in trouble? Hang on a second here, this teacher is a monster. What if they find out that it was me who told her? He gets in trouble and then I get in trouble. What if he makes my life hard? What if I get grounded? What if I get sent home? What if I get in trouble with my parents? All these thoughts flashed through my head in that moment that I went to tell his mother what had happened. And instead of telling her, what I said to her was, Christopher's just finishing his homework and he'll be out in a second. I just wanted to let you know. And she said, oh, thank you so much, dear. That is so lovely. And she said, thank you for letting me know. And I ran off to the dining hall for dinner, and I left the ugly scene behind me. But let me tell you the point of this story. I never forgave myself for not speaking up. I saw the bad thing that was happening. I knew this teacher was a terror, but I never said anything. I didn't protect Christopher because I was too scared about what would happen to me. And had I spoken up, I probably could have saved a lot of other children from this teacher. He may have been reprimanded, he may have not, but his behavior would have at least have been called into question. Now, here's the thing. I was a child. Sorry, feedback. I was a child. I was dependent on the adults in my life. My own safety and comfort was high up my list of priorities. But I'm not a child anymore. And neither are you. And neither is the massive group of people in the middle who are saying nothing about what is happening because they're scared for their own comfort and they're scared for their own safety. But listen, I get it. I get it. I'm not judging these people. I'm not one of the ones standing up and saying, you're bad and you're wrong and you should do this, because we were all children at one point. And it's our inner child that drives us as adults. But it's time to stop living in fear. It's time to make yourself uncomfortable, to do what is right. You are stronger than life is tough. I tell my children that every day when they're up against something that is hard, when they're scared. I say, you are stronger than life is tough. You can do uncomfortable things because you are strong. And the more you make yourself uncomfortable, the more you stand up and you say this is wrong, the more you take a stand for something, the more successful you will be in your life. Because when you are strong in one area, you carry that strength into another area and you raise your self-esteem and you open up possibilities in the world that you didn't see before. Because you make different and better choices. If I see someone being abused today, I can speak out, and I do. I make myself uncomfortable, and I risk my reputation, and I risk many other things, mostly what people think of me, which actually I realize you don't give a shit about anyway, excuse my bad language. I've been known for my potty mouth, it has to be said. And I may not succeed in making the bad thing go away, but at least my conscience will be intact. At least I will know that I tried, because bad things don't happen in the world because of the people who do them, but because of the people who stand by and say nothing. COVID passports are wrong. They are wrong. They take away your civil liberties. They move us one step closer to a social credit system such as they have in China, where they can strip you of your human rights. They can strip you of your chance to get on a bus, to book an airplane, to book a hotel. That's what happens in China. If you're not a good citizen and do what the government tell you you should do, they strip you of your rights. That is where we're headed. When you give the government control, they're not going to give it back. They're not going to say, oh, great, thanks, you gave us control. Now we have more control over you. But you know what? We decided we're going to give it back to you. No, it's not going to happen that way. It's not going to happen that way. They don't give it back. If you have been vaccinated, and here, do the hard thing. If you've been vaccinated, raise your hand. Raise your hand, everybody who's been vaccinated. There's no judgment here, okay? I haven't, by the way, but I'm raising my hand. If you have been vaccinated, it may be easy to think that it's not worth fighting because it doesn't affect you anyway. You have your vaccine passport. You can show it, and it's really, it's hard for those other ones, but it's okay for the vaccinated because, you don't really have to stand up for what is right because, you have your vaccine passport. And I get it. But if you give away your freedom now, you'll never get it back. We're not fighting about to vaccinate or to not vaccinate. That is a personal choice. I support your right to choose. I support your right to choose. Christopher was struck by the teacher that day because everyone was afraid to speak up against the teacher. He was allowed to abuse children because no one said anything. Final note before I finish this very long-winded speech, sorry, is that, do you know that the government are your employees? Hands up here who pays taxes. Who pays taxes? Some of you are a bit like, well, last year maybe, not so much. If you pay taxes, here's an interesting thought. The government are your employees. Your money pays their salaries. They work for us. Many people don't even think of that. They work for us. Yes, they can throw you in jail if you don't pay your taxes, but don't forget the fact that you still pay them and they work for us. So what can you do? Posting memes on social media is not enough. I'm sorry, it's not. Now you guys are here. I know I'm speaking to the converted. You're here. You made the effort. You've shown up and you're here. But you need to write letters. You need to speak to everybody about this issue. It's time to not be silent anymore. Don't just be vocal amongst friends. It's easy when you're here and you're amongst friends and like-minded people to talk about, to talk about the vaccine passports and to say that it's wrong, and it's easy to really feel safe to express your opinion, but you have to get okay with expressing your opinion where you don't feel safe, where it's not welcome. And don't try to be right. That's the worst thing you can do. Don't fight with someone. Open up a dialogue. Open up a discussion. Say your piece and then leave it. You're not trying to convince the people who aren't like you. You're trying to find the people who have doubts. The ones in the middle who aren't speaking up, who know this is wrong, but don't have an opportunity to safely voice their opinion because they're scared. Be the person who allows them to voice their opinion without fear. Be the safe space for them to speak up. Because the more people start speaking up, the more we write letters, the more we contact our MLAs, the more we write emails, the more we show up here in the centre of Belfast, the more we talk to people, the more the narrative will change. Before I finish, I just want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes that I've always stood by, and it's by a philosopher called Margaret Mead. And Margaret says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful citizens can change the world. For in fact, it's the only thing that ever has." Thank you for showing up, and thank you for